Welcome to Sunday Interview, and thank you for making time to join us. Now, over the years, Zambia has seen a rapid increase in the number of institutions of higher education, with private institutions outnumbering public ones. The country now has about 8 public universities, of which 6 are operational and 36 registered private higher education institutions. The influx of private universities has for a long time now been criticized for failure to meet standards and producing graduates that failed to fit in the industry. This prompted government to come up with a higher education authority with a task to accredit, regulate, and monitor the quality of education in higher institutions of learning. My guest this evening is a man with a wealth of experience in higher education, having worked as a lecturer at the University of Zambia for 23 years and later as Vice Chancellor for 8 years. He is the Director General of the Higher Education Authority, Engineer Professor Stephen Sanga. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Gravazio.
I was looking at your CV and your qualifications. You have a very rare qualification, professor in metallurgy.
Metallurgy.
And mining processing.
Yeah, mineral processing.
Mineral processing.
That's right. Yeah, thank you very much. I did my bachelor's degree at the University of Zambia in metallurgy and mineral processing in 1982. My supervisor then, Dr. Malula, I think he's around, I hope he's watching, he wanted me to stay so that I go on staff development and join the academic staff. But I protested. I said, no, I wanted to go to industry and experience the industry side of things. So I was employed by ZCCM, and I worked for Luansha Smelter then. So I worked for 2 years, which I enjoyed, and then I came back and joined the staff development program at the University of Zambia. Then I did my master's at the University of Zambia. By then, that 2 years, Gravazio, I got married as well. So I came with my wife and 1 kid to join the staff development program. After I did my master's, which I finished in 1985, I worked for 1 year from 86 to 1987. And then I proceeded to do my PhD in Glasgow, the University of Strathclyde. I finished in 1990, came back and joined the staff. And I rose through the ranks. I became a professor. In fact, I was one of the youngest professors at 45 or so. And then in 2007, there was an opportunity that arose to become Vice Chancellor, which I applied and got the job. I must say that I enjoyed the 8 years of being Vice Chancellor.
Vice Chancellor, probably at a very difficult time, the university facing ups and downs.
Yeah, there are historical problems at the University of Zambia. And when I went in there, because I'd sat on council as well, so I knew the problems that the university was facing. So I gave myself, things to do, to address. And the other day I was looking at the speech I gave, my vision, and I was happy to see that I'd actually addressed some of the issues that I said should be done. So it's you find a problem, you identify, and then you contribute to the well-being of the institution.
So I guess you still have your speech for the higher. you keep your speech for the Higher Education Authority, and you look at it after some years and see whether you've achieved. Now I wanted to know, you have a passion for education.
Yes.
All your career, your adult life has probably been spent teaching.
That's right.
With an exception of 2 years.
Yeah. I love students. And just the sight of seeing someone, you groom someone, they become adults, they take up responsibility in the nation, it's satisfying. It may not be well paying, but that is the satisfaction that us as academicians drive from the process. That prompted me to also take up this job because, as you know from your introduction, we have, at some point, if you go back to history, as a nation, we've been, the past 30, 35 years, investing more in primary and tertiary education. There are more schools now all over the country. Even now, we are still building. But we have ignored expansion in tertiary education. So we started having more graduates coming out of secondary schools, but with less access or space in higher education institutions. So government at some point liberated the higher education sector by allowing private sector to participate. But at that time, there was no institution that was supposed to be monitoring quality in these institutions. So we saw that some of the institutions didn't have the necessary requisites to offer some of these programs. So in 2013, the government created the Higher Education Authority through an act of parliament, Higher Education Act number 4 of 2013. Then in August the same year, there was a commencement order. But the board was only appointed in October 2014. So you see that was about a year. Yeah, and then that's when the operation started. So basically we're about, if you like, close to 2 years old.
And you're basically about 11 months in office. You've settled? That's
right. I started in January, and I must say that the past 8 months have been rough because, we've been trying to bring in policies and initially, I think the first year, the institution basically concentrated on coming up with policies to use in the registration and accreditation of learning programs. There was an interim secretariat, and I must commend my colleagues from the ministry who were attached. But this year we also looked at, we have these policies, but we don't have policies to run this institution. So we have spent the past months
trying to find your feet, trying to find the feet, to establish the base on which right. you can anchor your operations. That's have you managed? Have you completed your groundwork?
I think we have completed. I must say we are, if you like, 90%, because we started by, in terms of operations, we started by registering the private institutions. For the private institutions or higher education institutions are registered by the Higher Education Authority. The minister creates public institutions, in this case public universities. But in the creation of those public universities, the Higher Education Authority provides input or advice on how those should be run. So we have so far registered about 36 private universities. Of that complement, about half of them are basically dealing with open and distance learning. And we have a criteria we are using in terms of what a university should have.
Before you go into explaining the criteria and how many you've registered, I wanted you to go back a bit and explain a little bit in detail your mandate and your scope of work.
That's right. Thank you very much, Supervisor. The Higher Education Authority's mandate is to, one, regulate higher education in terms of quality assurance, in a nutshell, and also to provide advisory services to government on matters of higher education. We look at the processes in terms of the programs, first the institution itself, the programs they are running, leading to a qualification. Now, for the qualification, we have another body called the Zambia Qualifications Authority that are a custodian of all qualifications in this country. So ours is basically to regulate and to ensure that quality is maintained in the provision of higher education services.
So universities are supposed to accredit with you and register with you. So it's not only the institutions that register, but the programs have to be accredited.
That's right. The first thing is, you see, we are in a situation where we found these universities operating under the old act. We now putting these processes in place and we start chasing them. The ideal thing to do is that if you are a new university or you want to set up a university, you apply to us, we go through, then we say, okay, now you can run as a university, we have everything in place. The next thing is that you now tell us, okay, I want to do ABC, these are the programs I want to run. Again, we have a tool for accrediting those programs. We look at everything, the aims, objectives, curriculum, the staff. We look at who's going to teach the program. There must be a mix of part-time and full-time. We cannot run a program based on part-time staff. Then we won't accredit you. Resources that we are putting in this program. So we look at all those things.
I was about to ask you, because most of the universities, the challenge that we're facing as a country is lack of human resource, the manpower, the lecturers to teach. And you have probably these lecturers moving from one university to another lecturing, and they're part-time in most of these universities, which means for a number of programs, for a number of universities, you're likely to have the same names.
Yeah, Gravazio as a nation, we used to have a very good staff development program. I think that was the university running that, where it was like each university was running their own staff development program. It wasn't centrally done at government level. Such that at the moment we have very few people, running around, and teaching in these universities. That's why we're emphasizing that for you to run a program, you must have core staff. You must have at least some full-time staff. And the minimum we are putting for a program is at least 8. You must have at least 8 staff.
Full-time staff?
Well, full-time maybe about 5. You see, you have to have a mix. But you must have, the full-time staff you must have is such that if the part-time staff today decided not to come, those full-time staff must run that program. And those are things that we are looking at. That, okay, the full-time staff you have, are they capable of running this program in the event that your part-time staff are not available? So those are things that we are looking at. And we are just starting that program now of accrediting learning programs in these universities. And we expect that universities will start submitting we're calling them program portfolios. And then if a program is submitted, we have a database now of about 250 experts in various fields. 2 or 3 people look at it. They come and visit you. They interview your staff, even students. They will talk to students. Laboratories, they check everything. Then they will decide whether you are capable of running that program. So it's a binary system. Either we accredit or we don't accredit. If we don't accredit, your program won't be recognized. If we accredit, we now apply on your behalf to Zambia Qualifications Authority, who puts that program on the Zambia Qualifications Framework. It becomes a national program, and your graduates will be recognized.
This pushes a bit the cost of doing business in the education sector, I suppose, because people operating on part-time staff need to get full-time staff. But one issue is that the education sector has been criticized for churning out poor quality graduates, and basically because many people think the influx of private universities has created a situation where education is no longer a service, but a business. Is that what is prevailing in the industry?
I wouldn't say so. You see, as I said earlier on, the public universities could not cope with the increased graduates at secondary school. We needed private sector. It's just that at that time when the government made that policy, there was no authority or body to regulate the way they do business. So we need private sector. I must say that there are very good private sector universities at the moment in this country. I don't want to mention names, but they are there. And even the quality is actually comparable to any other university. The public university is not synonymous to good quality education. That's why this program we have started is going to ensure that the programs that are being given have good quality. We're also going to accredit programs in public universities. So all universities, public, private, are going to be subjected to the same yardstick. So we have very good private universities and churning out very good graduates.
Sam, maybe. I want you to focus on this issue a little bit longer, the issue of quality and the blame on the private sector. How bad is the situation?
Gravazo, we are coming from a situation where it was free for all, where anyone would just come up and set up a university at a house and go and get a certificate. In giving those certificates, I think there was no process to evaluate whether these people are capable of. So we are coming from that background, and yes, not all of them are have been that of good standard. I must confess that. But the process we are starting now will weed out some of those. Some of them, although we have registered them as universities, once we start the accreditation of programs, there is no guarantee that they will survive. Some of them will be shells because they will have no program that is accredited, and they will have no students. Because this process, as we move forward, every beginning of the year, we'll be informing the public of the universities that are registered. They are also on the website. We'll also be informing them of the programs that are accredited in each of these universities so that the public can have a choice. And if a university doesn't have an accredited program, Gravazo, it goes without saying that there will be no students. And of course, they will wind up. So we are starting a process because the universities have already been established. So it's like we are chasing them. But I think at some point we'll reach a level where we have accredited programs, and all these programs will be recognized by the Zambia Qualifications Authority, which by the way is a member of the UNESCO group of quality assurance bodies. So if they recognize it, which means UNESCO is going to recognize your qualification, and at some point, we'll have good quality education spread across the country.
Across the country. Now, when you set out to register these institutions way back in February this year, a number of 43 prospective universities failed to meet the mark. Mm-hmm. What were the challenges?
Yeah, Gravazo, first of all, this process is not that of cops and robbers. We are supposed to, the key word is continuous improvement. We are supposed to encourage these universities to work on the deficiency areas. At that time, because when we advertised, we received all these applications, and when we screened, those didn't make the mark, at face value. So we showed them the areas that they were deficient in, and that they should remedy those areas. Some of them have made the mark. Before we started the process, we had about 35 universities that were registered previously. Out of 35, 12 didn't make it.
They were closed?
No, because we had a cut-off point September. We wrote them to say, you haven't, whatever. They have now started responding. We anticipate about 4 to not make it, and we shall close them.
These 4 definitely they're not making it.
Yeah.
They're not ready.
They're not ready.
What don't they have?
Look, you cannot have...
Is it the program? Is it the staff?
Yeah.
Is it the infrastructure?
It's a combination. You see, because when you look at governance and management, for one to be a vice chancellor of a university, we are saying, look, one must have either, if you have a PhD, you must have at least 10 years experience in a university. Then you know the university culture, the issues that are involved in a university. If you have a master's, we are saying, fine, maybe 15 years in a university. You cannot have you cannot want to become a vice chancellor when you just graduated with a master's last year. So these are some of the issues that we are seeing, and we are telling these people, no, this is not possible. if we have to maintain quality. So those are some of the issues, of course, infrastructure. We have had questions whereby, we are being asked, but why are you allowing some of these universities, sitting in a house or office of 3-4 rooms to register as universities? If you are doing distance learning, you don't need a lot of infrastructure. All you need is offices where the instructors, the ones who get in touch with the learners, can sit and posting all these modules. So it's not the idea of a university, or the thing of a university is not UNZA or CPU, whatever. You can also have universities that are running distance learning modules and occupying a very minimal space.
So are we likely to see more of these universities move towards distance learning? It's going to be cheaper?
Gravazo, with the increase of the new ICTs, is possible, because you don't even need to be sending modules by post. There is what is called e-learning. You can have platforms where you post learning materials. Students can also do assignments, that kind of thing. So going forward, we can even increase enrollments without students coming to campus for residential school. At the moment, especially for the public universities, even private, most of them are going that way as a way of generating more resources for the institution, because you don't need students to come. You can still use whatever resources you have to expand on enrollment. So that is, I think we have seen that increasing. And in addition, we have seen international universities coming in with that mode of delivery. And some of them are very good technologies, and they also impact quality in our situation here.
We've looked at 43 universities. That's a big number of potential prospective universities not being accredited. Are you being too stringent?
We are not, Gravazo. We are trying to. Okay, I don't want to use the word facilitate. We are trying to encourage, because we realize that our public universities cannot cope with the increased number of secondary school graduates who want to want to go into higher education. So we're trying to have as many of these as possible. But as we do that, we are trying to also ensure that quality is maintained. So that is the key word, quality assurance.
Now, I want us to zero in. We did speak about a bit on lecturers. We still have institutions with lecturers that are probably only have bachelors and are teaching students aspiring to become bachelors, acquire bachelor degrees.
That should not be allowed. As I say,
lecturers with MAs teaching students wanting to acquire masters.
Yeah, that should not be allowed. You can only teach someone if you are a stage higher than that person. So bachelor's degree, to teach in the bachelor's program, the minimum must be a master's. If you have a master's, because as you know, in universities you can actually rise, you can even become a professor with a master's, because you are doing research and publishing, so you have research culture, so you can actually supervise a PhD candidate if you are a professor but with a master's, because that PhD is doing research which you've been doing, but that comes with progression and those aspects. So as we start the accreditation of learning programs, those are the things that we shall now go into, because we'll be looking at a program. We'll go through everything, the aims, whatever, and then who is teaching this program, what are the qualifications, if you have employed them, where are the contracts they've signed. So all those things will go into nitty-gritties, and we find that actually they are not qualified. It will tell you not to run the program.
Let's look at the issue of infrastructure. It's also another issue for universities that are coming up. Some of them, of course, like we said, running universities and in their backyards. What are you looking at when somebody is starting up a university? What do they need to have?
Okay. There's no standard infrastructure. We are looking at what are you going to be offering. And if you tell us it's 1 or 2 programs, is the infrastructure adequate to offer those programs? If they are not adequate, we will tell you no, we can't register you. So some of these universities were saying, as I said, most of them are doing distance learning, but there must be minimum infrastructure for you to run a program. You cannot have a program, I mean 2 programs, then you have, or 5 programs, then you have only 1 classroom, all those things. So we are matching the available infrastructure versus the program that you want to run. So all those things are part of the criteria we are looking at. We are looking at infrastructure. We are looking at even health and safety. If you are bringing people in the university, is the surrounding good enough? The safety of the people. We're also looking at, of course, the curriculum that you are running, the staffing that you have, governance, financial resources. Do you have? How are you? Do you have audited accounts, or if you are just beginning, do you have a system or financial system that you'll be monitoring? Even the startup capital. Do you have? So we have situations where a university comes and says, we ask them, but you don't have enough money to start. You haven't showed us. Then they will tell us, no, when the student starts paying, then that's the money we shall be using. Now, you can't run. Even your grandmother, she will come, or your aunt, to say, look, I want to start selling tomatoes. I want capital. You give her capital. So you must have startup capital for anything, whether it's a university or any business.
So you want them to have a minimum amount sitting in an account for them to start a university?
Yeah.
Has that been set already?
No, you cannot prescribe that. You look at, it's like going concern. You look at a university, what is your anticipated number of students, the staff that you have, what are the conditions of service, what salaries are you going to pay. For this year, are you going to manage? This is how much money you need. Your cash flow is like this. Do you have some money to cover this year? Or maybe at some point, students there will be some money that will come from students. But at least you must have some money to start with. So it's basically looking at your business. That will determine this, okay, maybe you need so much to start with.
One of the rules that you've said is that all higher education institutions registered in Zambia should adhere to agreed standards of the provision of tuition, assessment, and awards of qualifications.
That's right.
How far have you gone in setting these standards?
Yeah, we have criteria. That's what I'm saying. We have 2 criteria for registration of universities and criteria for accreditation of learning programs. The one for registering universities we have actually gone through, and as you know, we are starting. So we have come up. We have identified areas where we can improve. We are in the process of doing that. This month, we are now starting accrediting learning programs. That's where there will be a lot of work. And as I said, we will be involving experts. You won't be seeing me coming to you. You'll be seeing experts in the field of study which you are offering. So that is the beginning of that process. We cannot prescribe, for example, tuition fees. That's up to universities themselves to do that. But of course, it must be within affordable areas. So in terms of tuition, basically, when you look at the program and the lectures that we'll be teaching, we are then assuring the learners to say, this program is of good quality, and I think it has adequate lecturers for you to do that. And our duty is now to inform the public that this university has these programs accredited, so they make informed decisions. I must say, Grevazo, that we're actually receiving a lot of inquiries from the public. They are asking us to say, look, I want to take my daughter there. Is this university accredited or registered? The next thing we'll be hearing is, or they'll be asking for whether I want whether this program my daughter wants to do is accredited. In fact, the public is actually getting aware, more aware of this. That's why the universities, when we start this program, over-accrediting programs, learning programs, they have to take it very seriously, because if they don't, their programs won't be accredited, the public will know, and there will be no students coming to their universities. And you know what the consequences are. Basically, they'll wind up.
A closure. There are all sorts of exemptions currently in the industry. Some of very massive exemptions. Is that, are you regulating that too?
We have, you know, the Zambia Qualifications Authority has come up with, you know, one of the areas to recognize what they call prior learning. For example, if you have a diploma in journalism, for example, I spent 3 years, I've worked for 2-3 years, I want to go and do a bachelor's in journalism. Surely, you cannot subject me to introduction to journalism or introduction to that, because I've worked. So that is up to the universities to determine which exemptions they should go into. We cannot prescribe that, but it's something that is allowed, and you know, they can actually do that, and it will be accepted by the Zambia Qualifications Authority.
Now let's look at the issue of the curriculum. You're harmonizing programs, meaning harmonizing courses in case of new universities. And you're saying if a new university comes up, they will not have to develop their own new course. How will this work?
Yeah. The way we want to do it, and you know, I think harmonization is not maybe the word to use. If a university comes and accredits, for example, a bachelor's degree in economics, and our experts have gone through and they see that, okay, this program has the core inputs that a graduate in economics needs to know. You can add other things to it, but those issues must be there. If another university comes to accredit a bachelor's degree in economics, the experts will look at what we have accredited. Is this significantly different from what we have accredited? If it's the same, that university will be told to say, look, we have already accredited this program. It's now sitting at Zambia Qualifications Authority. It's a national qualification. Go and use it. They may add other things to the program, because you have to encourage innovation. It should not be like, you know, you go and use this. They may add other things to the program. They may want their graduates to know the issues of entrepreneurship or things like that. They can add those courses, but the core courses leading to that degree must be in that program. So we are not trying to harmonize, but we are trying to basically to ensure that these programs, there is quality in them, and the learning objectives for a particular program are achieved.
You're trying to ensure uniformity?
It's not uniformity. It's basically that whatever program you are running must have the learning outcomes as enshrined, in fact, as stipulated by the Zambia Qualification Authority, because of all these levels, what a bachelor's or a degree graduates must know. What are the learning outcomes? If those are in there, and also you are addressing the area of economics or journalism, or in my case, metallurgy, and the experts say, okay, this program has enough material for a graduate in metallurgy, then it's accredited.
So have you started receiving these programs from universities? How's the response like? Yeah. You should have started this by June, I guess.
Yeah, we are delayed because, you see, we realized that accrediting learning programs is very involving. So we started by trying to create a database for experts. So even advertising in newspapers, those who can assist us we have 12 areas, but grouped together. So we have around 250. So at least we can now use those in the accreditation program. We needed to also refine the tool that we are using, and we also came up with a template which we can guide the universities to use. So it's just last week that we sent out the templates. Basically, we have rolled out now the accreditation process. So now we should start receiving this. Is
there a deadline? You have these already existing universities.
Yeah.
Are you giving them time frame on which they should submit their programs?
Yeah, we are looking at 6 months because of the what is involved. Because for each program we need to give all the details of the courses. They have to be there. Well, that's the only way people know whether you have addressed the issues. And also we'll be sending these experts to come to go to the universities, to go and interview the lecturers, students, see the facilities, to see whether what you have submitted is what you have. So it's a very long process. That's why even the deadline, we are being flexible because there's a lot of work involved.
Mm-hmm. Are you doing anything to revisit the curriculum so that it adapts to the existing environment, so that it matches the needs, speaks to the needs of industry?
Yeah, in fact, one of the issues that or the criteria that we are asking, the universities to address for per program is whether that particular program is relevant. We're also asking them to show us whether they have consulted industry, the stakeholders for that particular area. It's not just coming up with a program. And also, you heard the Minister of Education, Professor Luo, mention that within the bursaries committee will be transformed to Higher Education Loans and Scholarship Board. Within there will be a unit that will be looking at, it's like Human Resource Development Unit, basically projecting to say, look, for example, now, the policy, 7th National Development Plan will be looking at industrialization, agriculture will be the center of everything. Then that unit will be looking at what expertise do we need in the next 5 years. The scholarships will also be tailored towards those needs. So you as a university, you don't just come up with programs. You have to say, look, what does the nation need? Because it's linked to also scholarships. We have more students if we start providing those programs. So that way, we'll be having or producing graduates that are of immediate need or use. So in terms of curriculum, we don't determine, it's the universities, but I think we just guide to say, look, your program must be answering to national needs. It must be answering to requirements and so forth. But the nitty-gritties, the universities themselves are the ones who are responsible.
There's a general feeling, of course, that in Zambia, like in probably other developed countries and others that are developing, our education system tends to focus more on general education and less on sciences, technical subjects, mathematics.
In terms of, for public universities, I think there is a balance. As you know, UNZA has some science programs, even veterinary medicine, they have School of Medicine, engineering, mining, agricultural engineering, and sciences are there. CBU, similar. Mulungushi is now starting, I think there's a university that have opened in Livingstone, School of Medicine. So in public universities, you start seeing, I think they have more sciences. We are not seeing, if you go to private universities, they are more into, when we were at university, we used to call them Chikwakwa programs, we call them soft programs.
Social sciences?
Yeah, because it's cheaper for them to run those programs. Because as you know, it's private, so they are also in it for money. But as an authority, we are encouraging private sector to go into sciences, providing engineering programs, technology programs. We are already talking to 2 international universities who want to come and establish here. In fact, one of them wants to form a hub here. They are basically into engineering programs, and that's what we're trying to encourage them. We are already talking, you know, if we talk about industrialization in this country, we need skills to run with that process. Yes, we need lawyers, we need economics and others, but we need someone to do the hands-on, which will drive this economy. And any efforts towards that, as an authority, we encourage.
Now, when we talk of quality, will you be monitoring graduates as well, the output, to see whether the work that you'll be doing will be matching with what will be coming out of these universities?
Yeah, we usually when you are accrediting a program, one aspect you have to do, you have to talk to graduates from that program. They will tell you about the program. You don't just consider. First, you talk to the staff and everybody, students who are in the program at that time. You also have to identify graduates from that program and see their, how they feel about the program. But in terms of monitoring the industry, I think that's not our mandate. But we are monitoring the programs. And one thing, in fact, the way we monitor that also, a university must show us to say, in coming up with this program or in reviewing a program, because every 5 years, for a 4-year program, the 5th year you're supposed to review the program. It's a mandate, or it's a mandatory. They must show us that they went to industry. They must show us the response from industry about their graduates, so that becomes information that they can use as they're reviewing the program. So that information we also ask for. But we don't monitor the graduates, because that's now the responsibility of the universities themselves. Because if I'm a university, I'm producing graduates, I must be interested to see how they are performing in industry. So I must talk to industry who are recruiting my graduates to see the shortcomings that are in our graduates, so that we can improve on our program. So as a good university would do that.
You've been a university lecturer for quite some time, eventually to Vice Chancellor. When you look at our education sector now, is it really that bad?
I'll be the first one to tell you that we have a very good education system in this country. We may have shortcomings here and there, but I know of our graduates who have gone out there with passes. We call it silent when they're announcing names. Grevajo Zulu,
Silent.
Yeah, silent. Those students, several examples, they have gone out there and performed extremely well. For me, that's a testimony that our education system is one of the best.
They've gone out, the argument has been, they've gone out to perform, they've performed. They've stayed around, they failed to perform.
Well, I mean, sometimes it's, the environment. If I'm an engineer and you're not giving me things I should use, and I go somewhere else, I'm given things that I should use in my work, I'll perform better there than here. It's just a fact. I've got personal people. There's a student, for example, who was my student. He graduated, went to University of Cape Town. He did his master's PhD. As I'm speaking now, he's a full professor at the University of Cape Town. He's a Zambian. Now, from the same system, from the same secondary schools, from the same universities. So, in terms of our system, I would be the first person to say our system is one of the best. Yes, there are shortcomings which we need to work on and refine here and there. But I think we have one of the best systems. If
we have one of the best systems, how come our rankings are that bad, even on the continent? The countries that we helped form universities, countries that we basically and set up universities in those countries, they're doing far much better than us.
Yeah, and we have Zambians in those universities. It's basically facilitation.
They're ranked highly than us.
Yeah, in terms of ranking, Grevazo, there are several things that ranking bodies look at. For example, Some of them will just look at, they rank universities according to the access to internet by students. That's the one criteria. So they look around, UNZA, how is access to students, CBU. Based on that, they will rank the universities according to that. Others will combine, in terms of infrastructure, access to journals. There are so many things that ranking bodies look at and rank. So the fact that we were not ranked highly does not necessarily mean that our graduates are of poor quality. Yes, we need to do research. If you look at, I'll give you an example very near here in South Africa. South Africa has what is called the National Research Foundation. It's a foundation funded by government that funds research in South Africa. All these universities in South Africa, they compete for that funding. And when you get that funding, you also have a master's student and a PhD students from the same money. So you are also, doing research. From there, you are publishing. You cannot compete with universities in South Africa because they have a facility. We don't have here. So these are some of the things that I don't believe that our researchers cannot do research. They can, but I think we need to facilitate, that process.
So, how important is this issue of ranking? If at one point, to quote you, you're probably going to say it's limited in the way some institutions rank. How important is it to have your university ranked among the top in the world and on the continent?
It's very important because, one, even your graduates, wherever they go, they'll, people will say, oh, they're coming from that. People these days, they Google. They're coming from that university, they'll Google, they'll say, okay, it's ranked, whatever. So that our graduates are immediately, recognized. Also, as an institution, sometimes we, request for funding from all these donor communities and so forth. Ranking becomes important. You also want to interact with the big boys. That way, you collaborate and also impart, our students and staff interact, knowledge transfer there. It's important to do that, but we also need to facilitate that process. We are also trying to start ours in this country.
I was going to ask you when we start ranking.
Yeah, we'll start doing that, but we want to finish first the process of accrediting learning programs. Then we'll start ranking within this country. There is a criteria to be based on so many things. And then we'll start. We have 4 tiers, tier 1 to tier 4. Tier 1 will be the highest, and tier 4 will be the lowest.
Do you want to share some of the issues that you'll be looking at when you start ranking the universities in Zambia?
Okay, it's basically a similar criteria that as we are using for registering universities. We'll look at governance. How are you governing the institution? What are the policies that you are using? That's very important. Issues of research. How much research are you doing? Output from research is basically publications. How is that? We'll be looking at the programs that you are running. For example, if you are running 20 programs and you're running them well and they are all accredited, we cannot compare you to a university that is running 2 programs. So those also come in. How many programs are you running? In terms of staff, what are the qualifications? How many PhDs do you have? Compared to all those things come into play, and all these things will be using them, will come up with a ranking.
Now, at this point, people already would have expected you to start inspecting the universities. Have you started?
The ones that we have inspected are the ones that are trying to register. Grevazio is not, you don't just register and we forget about you. When you register, there will be we shall be doing what we are calling auditing. We'll come back to you after a year. We have information which we had when we were registering you. We also know the areas that needed improvement. So when we come, we audit, we make sure that they were making improvement in those areas. If we see that 2-3 years down the line, there's no improvement, then you are not serious in this business.
So you've inspected those that you've registered already?
Yes.
What have you found there as the challenges?
Okay, there are a lot of challenges. Some of them, staffing is one of them. Although we are saying that to run a program, maybe you need 8 people, we see that some of them are running at 3, then 2, 3, 4, 5 are part-timers. That is a big challenge. And I think as a nation, we haven't invested in staff development. Because as I mentioned, staff development was being done by individual universities because there was no central place that this was being done. So staffing is one area. We have also noticed that especially science universities, but on the private ones, we don't have science universities, but infrastructure is a problem. But we are allowing them to improve on that. Otherwise we have no invest. If we are very strict, you would just say, look, we are not ready, but we are saying, okay, after 2 years, we expect you to have improved, maybe added 4 classrooms, things like that. So there are those challenges, but we are looking at the sector and saying, look, we must allow for continuous improvement. Otherwise, the universities like the UNZA where it is and others, they started somewhere. And of course, there must have been a lot of hand-holding. But we don't want to come and when we're auditing 3 times, there's no improvement, it's the same thing, then we'll just ask you to say, look, maybe it's time you stopped.
As we close the interview, I want you to answer this one question about your role as principal advisor to the government. I want to know, first of all, how much you're consulted. Secondly, I also want to know if you were to sit down today as government and provide your mandate as advisor, which one would be your priority area? What would you be telling government in running public universities?
Yeah, I must say that I'm glad that I think since I started in January, there's been very good interaction with the ministry. Even the current minister, we have interacted, the current permanent secretary. We are always, talking. In fact, recently we are on the same delegation that was touring the 3 new universities, Chalimbana, Kwame Nkrumah, and Mukuba University, basically to see how we can efficiently run them, or effectively and efficiently run them. As you know, they have been under transformation for some time, but I think we need to see how we can, quicken that transformation. So at least there's that consultation. So I think I'm glad that I'm being used, which is okay. And ours is to advise, and it's up to the minister and government to use that advice or not. But we provide what we can. Now you asked me a question in terms of what
would be your priority area.
Priority area in terms of advising government on how the public universities should run. It's the way it is now, and going by my experience when I was Vice Chancellor, we are too much bogged down in terms of paying salaries. I must tell you that I was standing to a chief accountant or whatever, cashier, whatever, or paymaster, because the resources that the public universities have are not enough to pay salaries and also, effective operational costs. So the main idea, the main issue that is there is to paying salaries, which is a very, very big problem, because the grants that they get do not match the wage bill. The fees that they get, of course, supplement the wage bill, and of course, you don't have enough to run, the university, and also, invest in laboratories and also new infrastructure. So that is a big problem. Now, increasingly, the public universities are going private, because we started what is called parallel programs, where students go in the afternoon to do the same things that their colleagues did, the same lecturers, to raise money to meet these things. So our lecturers are overworked, and and if you're overworked, you may not be giving enough attention to students.
And personal growth, such as research, suffers.
Research suffers, you're right, because there's no time, because we are human beings, you get tired. You can't, think of. So all these things. So the way to alleviate that, we need to look at funding. We have to look at a new funding structure for these public universities. How do we fund them to sustain? Because, see, they are public. And, that public nature must be seen to prevail in these universities. When I was Vice Chancellor, I was being told to go and look for money elsewhere. Yes, research can be done, consultancy, but how much can be raised from there? There's also a danger of concentrating more on raising money and forget about your mandate.
The core mandate of providing education. Professor, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Having you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, you've been watching Sunday Interview, and the guest this evening was Professor Stephen Simukanga, who is the Director General of the Higher Education Authority. I'll be back next week, same time. Pleasant viewing.